Hi, hello, my name's Token, and welcome back to the Devil's Advocates podcast. If you haven't been here before, usually I make videos about random things that I just want to talk about. Today, we're actually gonna rank useless sequels. Before we get into that, I'm going to go into how I am ranking them, then I am gonna go into all of them. I'm going to try to be as objective as possible. I'm providing my reasoning behind why I am giving the ratings that I do give them and the categories that I'm going to rate them by. I'm going to be ranking them by 3 different ways. 1, is it a good standalone movie? And then the second part that I'm going to use to rate, does it have anything that it adds to the original plot line which is useful? And then the last category that I'm going to use to rate it is if it is necessary via my rating system. If 2 out of 3 of my categories have a yes to them, like it is useful or it does add something useful and it is necessary, then I will say overall the sequel is necessary, or at least one of the sequels is necessary. So I will be summarizing the storylines for each one of these before I go into my rating. I want to say I do go into a lot of movies for this, and I haven't seen every single movie that I'm talking about. And I know you're gonna be like, you can't review something that you've never even watched or whatever. And I agree. I don't think I can review it and this story character arc is not this, that, and the other, yada 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 yada. Some of these I'm just gonna be like, hey, well, I have seen this one and this one, but I haven't seen the other movies related to it, and I can still say, hey, those 2 were really popular, while the other ones, you never even heard of them. We're going to go into Thor, and specifically the sequel, Thor, Love and Thunder. I don't know if you've ever heard it. Clearly, it's a lot more quiet than the thunder in the name. But honestly, I saw this movie. Like I did. This is one of the movies that I have seen on this list, and I didn't even remember it. Whenever I was just like, oh, what's a useless sequel that I saw? Thor, Love and Thunder. That was useless. What was it even about again? It was about fighting a god butcher. The original Thor movie, if you haven't seen it, it follows Thor, who has no longer been able to become king or lead Asgard, and is essentially, kicked out. He gets the Klaus treatment from his father, and says, you're not worthy anymore, alright? Go live outside for a while. Thor, Love and Thunder, he's trying to defeat this god butcher guy, essentially. I don't know anyone in my life that went and saw that movie and was like, oh my god, I love that so much, that was so useful. Does Thor, Love and Thunder work as a standalone movie? Although I don't remember every single thing from whenever I did see it, I know there were some bits that were funny and comical, but in comparison to the original movie, it was jarring, to say the least, whenever I watched it. Now, anything useful as of character growth in comparison to Ragnarok? No. At least with Ragnarok, I remember Thor and Loki having to work together. It felt more impactful than Love and Thunder. Is Thor, Love and Thunder? Yes, Thunder to see. Is Thor, Love and Thunder necessary to be able to enjoy the series? No, absolutely not. Actually, I would say you would enjoy the series more if you did not see it. So, overall, the sequel, Thor, Love and Thunder, is a useless sequel. Now we're gonna get into the Spider-Man movies. When it comes to the Spider-Man movies, I think a lot of people really love it because they're just like, oh, who's your favorite Spider-Man? You like Tobey Maguire? You like Tom Holland? I always forget the other guy's name. Andrew Garfield? Yeah, you like them? I don't care. Why are there 3 of them? Why? I could understand 2 at most. I think after you have 2 actors play the same character, no more. No. Unnecessary. Not to say that I dislike Tom Holland's, Spider-Man, but his was completely unnecessary. I will watch it because I like Tom Holland, but I don't like the fact that there's 3 different Spider-Mans. Standalone, I would say every Spider-Man movie is pretty good. Like, they all have their own, like, iconic memes and moments from it that go down in history. Now, do any of the Spider-Man movies add anything useful? People are probably not going to agree with me on this, but as I said before, I don't think it's really necessary to have multiple movies based on the same character unless it's some really in-depth long, like, plot line and they die after the many movies over it. Like, I don't need, oh, well, this is the new guy, they live and then they die, and wow, it's basically watching a TV series. Well, I mean, it is a TV series. They have TV series about it, and I don't care. I do not care about Batman's personal life enough to know what he does and gets up to. I just know he's the rich guy who fights bad guys. I don't think it's necessary whatsoever to watch any of the Spider-Man movies past the first one. And it doesn't add anything useful. It really does not. Because in order for it to be useful, something has to happen for them to fundamentally change and it have lasting consequences in the next movie. Or just, it's something that would fundamentally change it. The only one that I think out of all of the Spider-Man series that could possibly break this is like the No Way Home one. Where, you know, Spider-Man essentially, this is a spoiler alert, if you don't want this, skip ahead like 15 seconds, where everyone forgets who he is to be able to save the people that he cares about. Now that I could understand being like, well, that's long-term impact and whatnot, but I'm not giving it to the Spider-Man series because you should not. I'm gonna quote Markiplier here. This is your 5th movie. You get a no from me. It's not useful whatsoever. The Spider-Man movies, no, the sequels are useless. So we're gonna talk about the Ant-Man movies. Are the Ant-Man movies good standalone movies? Yes, I would say Paul Rudd makes them very chill. Not just because of Paul Rudd, but just as a general storyline when it comes to them. I saw the Wasp movie. I don't believe I saw the Quantum Leap movie, but as a standalone movie, they were entertaining, they were witty, they had banter. Ew, did they change my life? No. Did they even make me shed a tear? Also no. If you haven't seen the Ant-Man movies, this is also going to go under my summary for Spider-Man. Essentially, they get the power of the insect, which is really ironic I put them back to back like that, but they get the power of the insect, yada yada yada. The first movie mainly focuses on him becoming Ant-Man, and then the other movies, The Wasp is about introducing another character in which they go on another adventure regarding being a superhero, and then the Quantum one, I believe it's just focusing on the quantum world. I haven't watched that one. I did watch the Wasp one, so I can talk about that, but it's also not necessary as well to enjoy the series, so that gets another no from me and earns it an overall of a no. It is not a useful sequel out of the sequels that I am ranking today. Okay, and then we're gonna get into Cars. Yes, if you haven't seen it, it's about a car racing. Oh my god, who would have thought? No, it's about a car racing, and his name is Lightning McQueen, and then he ends up in this town or whatever, and he's training for the Piston Cup. That's what the first one focuses on, and then the second one is more or less going and traveling, racing for another different cup, or racing for another race to win. And I will say, I never expected there to be such, like, a political, if not a political, but the political economic scheme set up in Cars 2 was really thrown out of left field for me, and not what I expected whatsoever whenever I showed up at the theaters. Oh yeah, I'm gonna go watch the sequel to this original, to this racing movie. I just watched a tow truck talk someone into defusing a bomb. That's crazy. It does make me rewatch the Car series and just view it in an entirely different light. At least the first one, it feels like seeing someone before they got famous or whatever, and just like, oh yeah, that's like the good old days. And then the second one's like, oh yeah, they went on a really bad bender and got into cahoots with some really bad people. So the Cars movies, along with the sequels, I will say I haven't seen the third sequel, so I'm not necessarily vouching for the third one. Maybe the third one's absolutely terrible. It could be for all I know. But at least the second one, I'm gonna say, it is a good standalone movie. When I watched that, I liked it. Whenever I watched the second one, I liked it. Whenever I watched the first one, I like it too. And like I said, it makes me review it in a different light. And I'm gonna say it does add it adds usefulness, because if I am rewatching my movie and I'm like, it's so positively different from the first one that I'm thinking of the good memories from the second one while watching the first one. So it gets 2 yeses overall. And then to the last part, is it necessary to enjoying the series? No, I think you can enjoy the first Car movie by itself. Why did I say the first and I had 2 fingers up? Am I dyslexic but physically? The second one, given that it did provide political intrigue and bomb defusal from Cars, I'd say that was worth the watch. That was worth my money back in the day. I will say, if there's any more sequels that they're gonna make, I do think they will be pushing it. All right, now we're gonna get into the Rocky movies. If you haven't even heard of the Rocky movies, I don't know what rock you've been under, but it's essentially about this guy who's training to be a really famous boxer, be really good at boxing and whatnot. And I've seen the first Rocky movie. I have not seen the second, third, or fourth. I think there's 5 of them, and I know for some people will be like, you can't have an opinion on this because you haven't seen it. And this is one of the few things that I have on here that I have not seen. But I don't think I have to watch 5 hours of a guy beating up another guy to say, wow, this is redundant. Now, maybe I'll be talking out of my buttocks if there's some really great personal growth and development, and like there's just some, family storylines that I'm missing out on that are completely integral to the success of these movies, but I've never heard of it. If it's so well known for that, then clearly it's not well known enough for it to be made clear to me from other people that I know. I know people who've watched the other Rockies. Have they ever mentioned that to me? No. Are the other ones necessary to enjoy the full series? No. So overall, the Rocky movie sequels are not necessary whatsoever. Alright, now this one I have seen myself. Evan Almighty. This is the sequel to Bruce Almighty. And this I do feel like I need to explain, because not everyone's watched a lot of niche Jim Carrey movies, which some people be like, Bruce Almighty is not niche. I think it's niche enough for, if you don't know Liar Liar, I think that's what it's called. It's the one about a lawyer that can't lie and then there's a lot of problems. If you haven't seen that, then I don't think you've seen Bruce Almighty, let alone Evan Almighty. Bruce Almighty is the original movie that this comes from, and it's a man who essentially gets the powers of God, and he ends up being very selfish in numerous ways. Surprise! That's what people do with power a lot, unfortunately. But he gets the power of a god, and he does what he wants, essentially. There's a character in Bruce Almighty and in Evan Almighty. That character, he's just a side character. He ends up being told by God to build Noah's Ark. Yep, even though he's like an average, regular Joe Schmo. Yeah, build an ark, essentially. Do I think Evan Almighty is like a bad movie on its own? No, I know some people probably don't like Evan Almighty. I'm not saying I like or love it. I thought it would be worse than it was. And it wasn't. So I'm gonna put it still like, whenever I say it's a good standalone movie, I don't mean it's a great one. I think on its own it can be entertaining. If you want to be entertained, you can put it on. Just depends on the type of entertainment that you want. Does it add anything useful to the original plotline? No. Although it has been a while since I have watched it, but from what I can remember and from what I researched, it didn't relate back to the original Bruce Almighty story. It was just a character from Bruce Almighty that did that, which you could have just made an entirely new movie and worked off of the stuff from there. That's my opinion on that, because I'm just like, okay, well, if this isn't, why is this related to the Bruce Almighty, world, other than the fact that, that guy had the power of God for a couple of days? Like, I don't think that's a justified reason enough to just stay in this world. Why not just make a different one entirely? Is Evan Almighty necessary to enjoy Bruce Almighty? No, absolutely not. So, by that logic, it is not a necessary sequel to Bruce Almighty. So, trolls. Yeah! I don't like the movie. I don't. And if you're gonna ask me if I objectively think it's good on its own, in my opinion, no. But I am trying to make this as objective as possible. Objectively, a lot of people have enjoyed, like, it's popular for a reason. It's gotten so much money for a reason. At least, you know, the kids enjoy it or whatever. I'm not the target audience, and I don't want to be. Although I don't like it, objectively speaking, it is a good movie on its own, the sequel to it. And so although I was told about the good music involved in the Trolls movies, I just didn't really believe it, and I still don't like the music. But the world building from an objective fictional stance was good. Oh, I hate that came out of my mouth. Trolls essentially, like, the main plot line of it was they're trying to save each other from these bad guys or whatever. That was the first movie. And then the second one focuses more on, like, the world tour of, like, exploring the different types of trolls and, like, their music and whatnot. I do have to say it is useful in regard to re-understanding the troll universe with having all of these other types of musics involved and the different types of trolls. You can rewatch it and be like, oh, that's interesting, I didn't know that before. Is it necessary to the overall series? No, I think you can still enjoy the original Trolls movie without having watched the sequel. So it doesn't get a 3 out of 3, but it does get a 2 out of 3. And by my own definition, the Trolls sequel is a useful sequel. Alright, now we're gonna go into the Ice Age movies. There's multiple different plot lines in the storyline. One of them's about dinosaurs, and they're like, oh, we're with them and surviving that. And then the one about continental drift, and then actually, I don't remember if that was the one with the dinosaurs in it. And then the original one where they have to take care of this kid and whatnot to survive. Are they good standalone movies? I will say, although it is animated extremely poorly, like, go back and watch the Ice Age movies. Look at that garbage animation. It's not worth going to see it for the animation, but the few comedy bits in it that hit, they're really good. And I would say, as an overall standalone movie, the sequels even slapped themselves. And do they add anything useful throughout the movies? They do. I hate to say this, but throughout the rest of these movies, we haven't gotten into it yet, but this is the first one in which there's the introduction of, like, a partner or, like, having children and whatnot. Now, that's not say, oh, I have a very successful, movie. Let's just make them get married and have a child. I don't think that is, like, necessarily like, oh yes, this is gonna make a great storyline, because that's not how that works. That's not how writing works. It doesn't just poof, man, it's magically great. But I do think it's useful in the character growth of Manny. Like, I mean, the dude's kind of a pain in the butt, he's a pain in the butt, and he's really mean and rude. But as he progresses throughout this, and he, like, becomes a father and everything, dude is low-key, like, an Adam Sandler personality. I mean, he's not, like, a fully, like, laid-back guy, but bro, does this mammoth change drastically. And this is the 3 yeses of this is absolutely necessary. I didn't think it would be the Ice Age movies, because I low-key, like, hated on them. Not because I think they're bad. Obviously, I think they're good, but I hate that I think they're good, because it's just so, like, it's like Adam Sandler didn't want to show up for work that week, and it was just like, oh, I need to think of something funny, and he's just like, what even is Sid? I don't know what Sid is. What if we had whatever Sid is, just talking about leprosy? Like, I just think it's the fever dream, or at least if Adam Sandler got high and he was like, oh, I got a couple of give them leprosy. But I would say it's necessary to enjoy the overall series, because it's such a drastic change, and so overall, yes, the Ice Age movies are absolutely necessary. In relation to me just absolutely gassing up Ice Age, although it should be icing up, shut up. Someone would probably be like, so you'd probably think Kung Fu Panda would be good. It's another movie about a bunch of animals who are talking to one another, going on grand adventures. No, actually, I don't think it's great. Like, not that I hate the Kung Fu Panda movies, because I think Two of them are good, and I know some people will probably be like, well, the third one's great. I don't think it was necessary at all. I know it's supposed to be, oh, I have two dads. I have my, like my bird dad, and then I have my actual panda dad. I feel like that was so antithetical to the whole, like, relationship he had with the bird dad. Although I'm not adopted, I just think it's so weird whenever there are TV shows and, like, movies that are like, oh yes, we've established that this character is adopted from a parent, or not from a parent, but this parent adopted them, and they are really loving and care for one another, and possibly even they came from really terrible situations beforehand, in which they were abandoned by their original family. And I know his dad comes and he tries to find them and find him and whatnot, but dude's already like 30? Actually, I have no idea how old Kung Fu Panda is, but I feel like it's past, alright, dude? Like, not to quote the priest from Fleabag, it'll pass, the dude's already, like, he's older than when you had him, and I hate how there's a storyline of like, oh yeah, we're gonna make this really loving adopting plotline, and then completely derail it in the third one for his biological dad to show up and be like, actually, I love you, and that's great that he loves him, whatever, but it disrespects that bird. I'm gonna be so honest. I think it disrespects the bird far too much because it's fictional. You have the choice of that not happening, and you deliberately chose to take that writing path, and I don't like to see that in movies. Now, if it's a real-life person who was adopted, of course they're entitled to do whatever they want. If they truly want to figure out their deadbeat that left them 20 years ago, they're entitled to that. They can do whatever they want. But it just irks me when it's fictional, because that was completely optional, by the way. That bird loved that panda like his son. Now he has to share custody with another man. But the Kung Fu Panda movies, standalone, are pretty good. Even the movie that I don't like, disregarding the whole adoption plot line. If you haven't seen the Kung Fu Panda series, the first one is essentially about, the panda becoming the Dragon Warrior. Wow, I burped. I'm keeping that in. And then the second one focuses on some of the, aforementioned terrible history of him being one of the last pandas, and is a very upset bird. Which is ironic, because his dad is a bird and then another bird tried to kill him. And I would say that one, arguably, very important to the storyline. So maybe the second version, the second movie of Kung Fu Panda, useful. Because there's literally a section of the second Kung Fu Panda movie where the evil bird is looking at him like, how did you do that? After all that I've done to you, how can you still, I took everything from you, your family, blah, blah, blah. And then he looks at him and he's got like his glowing golden orb, like, see, that's the thing, Shen. Scars can heal! Like, you just went into the third movie and reopened the scar again because you're just like, I guess Daddy does love me, even though he could have come and seen me from the mountain. I think the second movie is necessary to enjoy the whole series because of how much it adds to, like, his plotline with, it adds relation. You can rewatch it and be like, wow, we know a lot more about, Poe than we did beforehand, and, like, we see him as a very different person than who he started out as, whenever he was moving around that ramen noodle cart for his dad. But I'm not going to give this a perfect 3 out of 3, purely just for that plot line, because what do you mean you gave him he has his dad. His bird dad loves him very much. Madagascar, if you haven't seen that, it's about a bunch of random zoo animals who are no longer in a zoo and they have to try to survive, and all of that loveliness. And then there's like 2 other movies along with it. One of them where they end up in a circus, which I think that entire thing was very unnecessary. Now, the Madagascar movies by themselves, I would say, are good standalone movies. They're going to be entertaining. You're going to watch that, you're going to be like, wow, why did somebody animate this? And then you're going to watch it again. Now, when it comes to the other Madagascar movies, I mean, some of them are interesting, and they have like a Christmas one as well. They're interesting. Is it useful? Are you going to watch this and then totally change your view of Alex or Marty or any of those characters? Not really. It's not such a fundamental change in which I'm gonna be like, I need to watch this. I need to watch this random lion go and break into like houses to be Santa. Like, I don't You don't need to. Alright, now we're gonna talk about the Despicable Me movies. Now, if you don't know about the Despicable Me movies, what rock have you been living under? Even the Minions got the Facebook mom. If you don't know about the Minion movies or Despicable Me movies in the age of 2026, I kind of envy you. But the Despicable Me movies, if you've been living under not even a rock, like an iceberg at the bottom of the ocean with Titanic, if you don't know what those are about, it is about Gru and how he has a bunch of minions and he wants to steal the moon in one of them, and then he ends up adopting these 3 children. And then the second one, it's more along the lines of like how he gets a wife. But the third one, it's like this 80s guy who I believe they're trying to steal a diamond, but I know his brother's involved, and yeah, Gru has a brother who's a blonde and has a thick head full of hair, which that's not how genetics work usually in families. Like, if one of you are bald, the rest of you are screwed. Most of the time, not every time, but generally, that's not like a thing where you're just like, oh yeah, my brother, like, he's got a full head of hair while I am as bald as one of those wrinkly cats you have to oil every day. These sequels can be useful if you are adding in a relationship and it fundamentally changes the person on like an individual level. And I think him having a wife now and everything, like, it changes him and it changes the dynamic that he had with the kids that he cared about. Is it necessary to be able to enjoy the whole series? I don't think it's substantial enough to where you have to watch it to enjoy the rest of the series. I do think there was a definite, a good change. It wasn't a poorly like, oh, they're just dating. You know, like, I will talk about one that I think it doesn't really change much later on. Like, oh, you just threw having a girlfriend on there. Oh, there's the plot line. Like, I think it was done well. I don't think it's done well enough for me to be like, oh yeah, you have to watch this to be able to enjoy any of the media related to it. No. So it's gonna get a 2 out of 3, and it is a necessary sequel. But after the second one, the third one, I'd like the third plus, not necessary. No. Alright, now we're gonna talk about Frozen. Sequel, I enjoyed the sequel more than the first one. So the Frozen sequel, it is a good movie, standalone. I do believe you're gonna be very confused if you watch it without having watched the first one, although I don't know where you would be in the world if you haven't heard about the first one and what happens in it. So I'm going to say there's generally enough context in the universe for any individual to at least know the basic plot line of what's going on in the first Frozen movie, enough for me to not have that as a reason for it not being a good standalone movie. Like, if you're going to watch Frozen 2, you're going to learn a lot more about Arendelle, historically speaking at least, given the sixth spirit and everything. Is it necessary to enjoy the first Frozen movie to watch the second one? No. In the right of a necessary sequel, 2 out of 3, but it does not get a 3 out of 3 because it's not necessary to be able to enjoy it. Alright, and then we're gonna go into The Incredibles. Yep, because I believe it was like a 10-year gap between the first Incredibles movie and the second Incredibles movie. If, maybe I have that one wrong, editing me if I decide to edit this in. Am I right? Huzzah! But The Incredibles, if you haven't seen that, it's essentially about, a family that has a bunch of superpowers, and then this one major fanboy has a lot of problems and ends up kidnapping them and trying to be really evil and destroying. And in my subjective opinion, if you're gonna make a movie about a superhero and the entire personality of the other person is, I need to take down this specific superhero because of their abilities, I don't find that interesting, because that's just basically an entire Gojo episode of like, oh, except for the sole exception of The Incredibles. Like, okay, can we just see them fight? Or maybe I just don't like The Incredibles franchise. That could be part of it, I'm gonna be honest, because what do you mean you just have 2 movies about them being glazed for being superheroes? Why don't they just, the fighting? As a standalone, both of the movies are good. I will say, again, the majority of these are good by themselves. I don't think it adds necessarily much that is useful. Is it interesting? Yes, but I'm not looking at any of the characters inherently different after I watch this. And then is it necessary to enjoy the series? No. So overall, I would say The Incredibles sequel, very unnecessary. And then we're gonna get into Zootopia. So if you don't know about Zootopia, the first movie is about how there are predators that are going wild and they don't know why. Judy Hopps wants to be a big bad cop and she wants to make Zootopia a better place and investigating as to why predators are going wild, which I will say it does lead to the discussion of like corruption in the government and everything on both movies. Am I gonna spoil what? No, I'm trying to refrain from being spoiler heavy. Standalone, both of those movies are really good, and it's not to say that I hate to say that, but it's not what I expected whenever I watched both of those. Whenever I watched the first Zootopia movie, I did not expect to actually be emotionally moved by a rabbit and by a fox talking about how, and then in that day I decided I'd never let anybody see that they got to me. So things do get to you? I didn't expect that from a movie about animals. I really did. Now, did it add anything useful to the original movie that makes you view it in a different light? I'm gonna say no. I do think they're good movies. Don't get me wrong. This is not me dissing Zootopia, but I don't think it's useful. I do not think, well, that is not useful, but I don't think it adds anything new to the story that was already told. The first story was about corruption and power being misused in relation to the other individuals in Zootopia. And then the second movie is the exact same thing, just on another level. Now, is it insightful? Yes. Is it a good storyline? Yes. Is it anything new? No. So it's not getting that point. And is the second one necessary to be able to enjoy the series? Also, no. You can enjoy both of those as standalone. I mean, you're going to be a little confused about the weird moments between Nicholas and Judy if you don't have the prerequisite information of the first movie, but it's not necessary to be able to put that on and be like, alright, then we're going to talk about not a niche one, but Wreck-It Ralph. The original one, you know, Ralph, he is the bad guy, and he doesn't want to be a bad guy, so then he tries to go and win a medal in a different game to be able to come back and be able to live in the penthouse with the other people. I don't think he even ends up, I guess this can count as a spoiler, but I don't think he even ends up living in the house with them. Like, even after all of that, like, I mean, he still gets thrown off the building and everything, but I think they made a different house for him still. And that's not to say, like, oh, he should have, like that he's entitled to living with them, but I still think it's weird after, like, everything and him sacrificing himself that he doesn't have at least a bit more of a celebration. But the Ralph breaks the internet, Sugar Rush is having trouble, like Penelope's game, and they're trying to go in and fix it via the internet. Do I think Ralph Breaks the Internet is as good as the first one? I'm gonna be honest, no. I don't think so. Do I think it's a terrible movie? No. I still think it's sweet. You know, it has the whole plotline of like, oh, I need to grow as a person. Like there's character growth. Do I think it's necessary for you to watch Ralph Breaks the Internet to have a fundamental change of an outlook on who Ralph is as an individual? No. So I don't think that's necessary per se. Like, I kind of view it like, I'll give some emotional bonus points like I did for Ice Age, because at least with this, you get to see Ralph not living in filth. You know, like, he's out there having fun with it, like, he's happy. I mean, obviously not the whole time, but you get to see him not be depressed and necessary to be able to enjoy the first movie. No. I'm kind of conflicted on giving it the second sequel is necessary. I'm gonna say it's necessary purely based on the fact that we get to see Ralph at least happy for some bit. Not all of it. There's very, very key scenes in which he's not, but I don't like the fact that it ends. I know the whole thing, oh yeah, I still get thrown off of the roof. I don't like that. He literally he almost died falling off of something before, and we're ending the movie with that and it being bittersweet, and he just accepts who he is as the bad guy. I mean, there's nothing wrong with being the bad guy in that case, but I feel like my boy Ralph deserves more, so I'm gonna give him, it's worth it just to see him living his life outside of trash heap. Now we're gonna get into Tinkerbell. Yup, Tinkerbell. I have seen several Tinkerbell movies. Why? Because why not? Well, the Tinkerbell, I know the first movie goes on about how she, finds herself as a tinkerer within the society of other fairies and whatnot. And then there's other movies One of them is like the winter-based one, where she goes and discovers the winter fairy and whatnot, and goes into the winter section of it. And then we have the pirate-based Tinkerbell movie. Standalone, both of those are very good movies. Does it add anything useful? I will say the introduction of an entirely different, element. I mean, snow isn't an element per se, but a section of the main cast and, the main plot line, that is substantial enough for me to be able to, this is useful for you to be able to contextualize the entire universe. It's a bit like the Trolls and the different types of musics and whatnot. Having the whole, frost fairies and whatnot is beneficial to the plot line and useful and adds on to the world building of the main story. Now, is it necessary to be able to enjoy the series? No. And I don't think either of them are good enough to be like, oh, you have to, it's so good, it's so good, it's so good. Not to say they're bad. I think they're really good movies, but you don't have to watch all of them to be able to enjoy one of them. So I will say the sequels for the Tinkerbell movies are necessary, but not a 3 out of 3 necessary. Alright, and then we're gonna get into the Hotel Transylvania movies. That's right. So this is gonna be I'm gonna have a similar opinion of this that I had with the Kung Fu Panda movies. If you haven't seen the Hotel Transylvania movies, then I'll give you a little rundown. Dracula had a kid and whatnot, his wife died, and eventually this child ends up falling in love with this random guy, and then it becomes a whole thing of oh, I'm a girl dad, you can't do that. No, you can't fall in love with human. And then they end up falling in love and everything. And then the second one, I believe, is more focused around the child itself. But I know the third one. I'm mainly focusing on the third one in relation to its usefulness or whatever. I know that Dracula is supposed to fall in love with another woman and whatnot, and they're on vacation and whatever. I think that is so antithetical to the first movie. What is it with writers creating this whole plot line of oh yeah, well, I'll never love again because you only zing once. Well, I guess zings mean nothing now, because why would you bring up... Okay, I wouldn't mind the idea of Dracula moving on and, accepting love in his life again. I can accept that as, character growth in relation to a story. I've had several of them be oh yeah, I feel like this adds to their character and everything, and helps me see them in a new, better light. But every way I put this Hotel Transylvania movie series, it just doesn't put them in a new light, or in a good new light, because the primary purpose, just don't bring up the idea of a zing. And don't make it such a core facet of the first part of the movie that was but I zinged with the human. It has to be, I only do it once. I have to fall in love with him. If we're gonna go by that definition of zings meaning nothing, then the whole first movie shouldn't have existed in the first place. You know what I mean? Because if we're gonna sit here and be oh well, I zinged again with somebody else. I mean, if we used that, Dracula could have looked at his daughter and been oh, you did? Well, guess what? I've zinged 30 times since your mom, but that doesn't mean I go and date somebody else. No, that devalues the entire system that you set up fictionally. So standalone, they do have their good comedy bits and whatnot. Do I think it's the peak of entertainment? Absolutely not. I'm not gonna put on a Hotel Transylvania movie. Imagine you have a date over and you're just oh yeah, come on baby, hop on the couch. I mean, we're already in a really weird place. Hop on the couch and I'll put on something good. And then you just see Dracula with a fanny pack on. That's not gonna be the peak of entertainment that I'd want to put on in general. But it doesn't add anything useful. As I said before, it actually contradicts the main premise of the first movie entirely. It does. So actually it works against it. I would give this negative points if I didn't like Halloween so much, because I can't have a Halloween movie getting negative points, and although it's a comedy, it's within the same genre of super mythical beings, and I don't like the idea of giving it a lower score for that. If it were not, I would be giving it a negative point right now. So if you want to make an unbiased point chart of it, which you have fun with that, but if you want to do that, then do that. And is it necessary to the series? No, absolutely not. So, unnecessary sequel completely. Speaking of other spooky movies, we're going to talk about the Ghostbusters movies. And I'm going to include the remakes and whatnot, because a remake, sequel, potato, I know it's not the same thing, but it's the same vibe. Now, this isn't me saying I think the new Ghostbusters was, well, it's not new anymore, but whenever it was new, that it was the worst thing on the planet. I think there's other things, I've seen worse movies. So I'll put it, it's generally good as a standalone movie. Am I gonna watch it over the original? No. I'm not, personally. Does it add anything useful? No, just a retelling. I do think remakes are actually more useless than sequels, and this is technically a remake. So maybe I'll be kicking myself in the shins later. I have no idea. How would I kick myself plural in the shins? That would require 4 legs. And then, is it required to be able to enjoy the original source material? No. You can gladly put on the original Ghostbusters and have a swell time without having to watch the remake or any other spin-offs revolved around it. Speaking of holidays, we're gonna get into the Santa Clauses. Did you know they have a TV series for the Santa Clauses right now? No? If you don't even know what I'm talking about, at least with the Santa Claus movies, some people don't know. It's about this guy who ends up turning into Santa Claus because Santa Claus fell off of his roof, and oh, well, he fell off of your roof. Now you have to dedicate your life to being Santa Claus. You weren't accountant before? Screw that! Now you make toys. Put the cookie down and go and work in Santa's sweatshop. I don't think, no. Standalone, they're okay. There's some very iconic bits from the Santa Clauses and him, becoming Santa Claus and having to either defend the North Pole or have to deal with internal conflicts between other mythological beings. I invented chill! That's such a good line. I love that so much. Do I think it adds anything useful? No. The only useful thing from it is the cultural jokes, per se. Like, you don't need to watch and be like, oh yeah, I need to know what's going on in the Santa Claus universe. No, it's just, oh, it's Christmas. I need to put something on and fill the air and it just be generally in the spirit of Christmas. And then you put on the Santa Claus movies, not because you're not enthralled in the lore of the Santa Clauses. Like, that's not why you're putting that on. Is it necessary to enjoy the series? No. So, no. The Santa Claus series, not necessary at all. The sequels, no. I would say maybe the first 2. The one with the I Invented Chill and the original Santa Claus movies, bangers. Other than everything after that, in one ear out the other. Alright, now we're gonna get into the Beverly Hills of Chihuahua. I know this is gonna be such a very niche thing that only a couple people are gonna remember from their childhood, but whenever you were like driving in a car, well, not whenever you were driving in a car, yes, you were driving underage as a child, fully well, no, but whenever like your parents were in the car and you had this little like portable movie thing that you could just put in your like DVDs and watch it, although I know people in their Teslas now, they have their screens ingrained into their skin so they can view. I bet that'll be something that exists someday. Terrifying thought. Screw breaking the back of a book, breaking your back to be able to get cell service. Whenever you would go on those long road trips and you just put on whatever movie that your parent had on a CD disc, and it's not probably going to be a great one because they got it on a discount at Walmart probably, or just genuinely anywhere, but it's your only source of entertainment. It is your only oasis in the hours of driving. So one of the movies I would continuously put on over and over again was this Chihuahua movie. Is it because I really like the plot line of this dog that was a woman who found her voice and barked, and this is just another sign of little dog syndrome within myself? I don't know. Is this just my own Napoleon complex coming out and enjoying that? Maybe. I don't know. But I watched that Chihuahua movie so much more than I should have. I think it's mainly because I really love dogs, and I was just so enamored by, oh my god, they can get their mouths to move like an annoying orange. Like, if you don't know this plot line, it's essentially this very rich and pampered Chihuahua who ends up in a very perilous situation in which she ends up finding her voice and she falls in love with this scrappy, frankly, broke Chihuahua guy and whatnot, and they end up falling in love and yada yada yada. The standalone movies for this Beverly Hills of Chihuahua movie, I will say individually they're good. Does the second one add anything useful enough that would make me rewatch the first one and be greatly impacted by it? No. Because the second one focuses more on like their family life and that experience more so than her whole like dark night of the soul. Are any of the sequels necessary to enjoy the whole series? No. that's the end of the video today. Today we went into my ranking system of how I was going to rank each of these sequels to being useless, from are they good standalone movies, do they bring anything useful to the storyline of either the characters or the plot overall, or if they are necessary to be able to enjoy the whole series overall. If you want to see another video like this, please let me know and I'll create another video going into the details of each of these movies. But if not, I hope you enjoyed. I enjoyed filming. My name is Token, this is Theta, and we will see you all later. Token today, and this purgatory face crawl in to create my number awaits.